between us, the evidence we had was so poor that it wouldn't have been fit to punish a cat. Prosecutor André Mornay to a journalist in 1947. Coelho's book is not a history book, and in all honesty, we'll be pointing out quite a few areas of concern in the historic narrative. But historic fiction carries an important place in the study of history, as long as it's good historical fiction. Dry tomes full of dates and obscure names are excellent ways to keep facts straight, but what they do not do is relay the feeling of history. They're facts, they aren't stories, and the human mind needs stories to truly understand. Today we'll be going over pages 172 to 186 to the very end. And as we say every season, there will be spoilers. We're discussing a book as if we have all read it together, and it's about a historic event that is well known. My not unreasonable assumption is that everyone knows who the one-armed man is in the Mata Hari story. And here we come to the end of Mata Hari's life, as narrated by her lawyer Clunet, and a brief look at the futures of those involved in her prosecution. Her interrogations were going nowhere, with a lot of smoke, but no evidence of fire, until 4 months into the game, when Georges Ledoux produced a stack of intercepted telegrams that didn't name Mata Hari directly, but gave enough peripheral information that the person being described was easily identified. The telegrams had begun to be intercepted in December of 1916, which begs the question, why did Ledoux wait so long to have them introduced? Even more suspicious, they had been transmitted using a code the French knew that the Germans knew had been broken. It seems fairly obvious that this was information the Germans wanted the French to have. And given the fact that it was a trick the French had used earlier themselves in the war to identify a German agent, one would think they might have been just a wee bit suspicious of the timing. Humans have an infinite capacity to believe anything that supports what they already want to believe, however. And this is the kindest interpretation of the telegram events. A more sinister possibility is based on the fact that the original telegrams were never produced, and even some of the copies disappeared rather quickly from the archives. The rest from there was history. A scapegoat was needed, evidence fortuitously appeared, and a woman was shot at dawn. Whatever she's done in her life, she did not deserve that. Rudolph MacLeod, when informed of his ex-wife's execution. But that's not where the story ended. To add insult to injury, Mata Hari's estate was ordered to pay for her trial and prison costs. Her assets were liquidated, and although there was quite a bit left over after these costs were paid, and Rudolph MacLeod did sue on behalf of their daughter for the remainder, it somehow disappeared. The child, who died at age 21, never received anything from her famous mother. Although Rudolph was happy to sue for monetary gain, he didn't bother with claiming Mata Hari's body, which was donated for research, and her head ended up in the Museum of Anatomy in Paris, where it was preserved. There it was displayed, but an inventory in 2000 could not locate this grisly souvenir. It was believed to have gone missing about 50 years previously and has not been located since. But again, Mata Hari's story does not end with Mata Hari's fate. 4 days after her execution, the instigator of her harassment himself, Georges Ledoux, was arrested on suspicion of spying for the Germans. In a stunning WTF moment, he claimed that the information used to imply his guilt had been planted by the Germans. Ladeau was held in prison from October 1917 until May 1919, and it was a stain on his reputation he was never able to erase. The French, sensitive to outside catastrophes which might spread to their own nation, may have been remembering yet another chief of counterintelligence who had betrayed his own country just before the war began, Alfred Radel of Austria. The humiliation of such treason was too much for the Austrians, and Radel was allowed to commit suicide before a full accounting of his actions could take place. But that was before the murder of the Archduke in Sarajevo, and before millions of French men were killed in the trenches. By 1917, humiliation was better than ongoing betrayal. Ladeau was subjected to much of the same treatment he had arranged for Mata Hari. It was just that people cared a lot less who he was sleeping with. Marguerite Zhao, Greta MacLeod, Mata Hari was larger than life during her life and continued to fascinate the world after her death. In an age where women were expected to live lives within a socially prescribed box of morality, she completely ignored convention and lived as she pleased. And while I can admire her chutzpah from a distance, truthfully, I probably would not have been enamored of her in person. She was not known for being tremendously loyal to her female friends, especially when it came to using the men who touched her world. Still, I have to agree with her husband. Her sins in life did not deserve that. Thank you for joining me in our third season of the From Sarajevo to Red Africa book club. I hope you enjoyed our discussion of Paulo Coelho's book, The Spy, as well as our look into the actual history of Mata Hari and the world of La Belle Époque and World War I. Mata Hari provides the perfect segue for us into our third season of podcasts and History She Wrote episodes, which will tackle the world of everything sneaky. We'll be looking at some of the most audacious, daring, or catastrophic episodes of what nations try to do without being seen. But someone, somewhere, is always watching. Until next time, please keep reading and researching. It doesn't do any good for anyone to have uninformed opinions.
What to do